So thank you again to all of you who have joined us this fine Friday afternoon. We're going to be talking about some various immigration issues that are impacting you all in our office right now. Things we know, unfortunately a lot of things we don't know that we'll be talking about, things that are conjecture might happen, and everything else. I know this is a really stressful time for everybody. I really appreciate you joining and trying to stay connected on top of what's happening. It's hard to follow the news all these days, and it's especially stressful past several weeks with everything that's going on in our country. It's a challenging time, and I just want to acknowledge how difficult that might be for some of us, and that we're all going through this right now together. And hopefully we come out a better country, is my hope. So with that said, just a reminder that our office OISS here is still open and working. I say open maybe with parentheses. We're still operating largely remotely. Some of us, just so you know, actually do have access to the office. I'm here right now, but it's all very socially distanced. We're still doing all of our appointments remotely, so Zoom or Google Meets or whatever like this, or phone. But we're still definitely working every day, emailing, and you can definitely still schedule appointments with us. I do not know when we will next be having in-person face-to-face appointments. That might not be for a long time, but please definitely still get in touch with us. We're here trying to help you out during this ongoing pandemic situation. Quick reminder, my name is Jason Lawrence. I'm the Deputy Director. I primarily work with scholar issues now, J1, H1B, green card issues, etc. We have 3 F1 advisors who are with us in the meeting today. Our Executive Director, Ross Bryant, our Graduate Assistant, Heather, and our Administrative Assistant, Talitha. So contact information is here. You can still schedule with us online through our website and stay in touch with us right now. Also, you at least followed our announcements today. But if you can, follow us on social media. We're at UNLV OISS, both on Facebook and Instagram. We've been adding wellness posts, tips to help us all get through the crazy, stressful times we're living in. Also, immigration announcements we're starting to add onto there. We announce events like this. We've been trying to do a lot of social events, actually. So if any of you like cooking, we thought that'd be fun. We've been doing that lately. And we also have a YouTube channel. I apologize, the URL is pretty long. I don't think we have a personalized one just yet. But the previous immigration update presentation is on there, and I think we plan to upload this one on our YouTube channel as well. So follow along, stay up to date. So I'm going to go over a few resources. And by the way, those of you that did attend our last immigration update, some of this information is still the same. Quite a lot is new, but there will be some repetition, so just disclosure there. Some of the resources I mentioned back then are still very useful now when we had this last talk back in April. NAFSA is our professional agency. They have a fantastic compilation of all the different immigration updates that are going on right now in the country. Our office has an FAQ page that you can refer back to, answers a lot of the things you're usually wanting to know. The Department of State country-specific information page, I still probably refer people to that almost every day via email. It allows you to select an individual country, South Korea or France or China or whatnot, to see what are the latest travel restrictions between the US and there. The CDC, that's actually a new web page I hadn't shared previously. That one also has great up-to-date travel restrictions and guidance from different parts of the world. So these are sorts of things you want to be checking on regularly, especially if you're trying to figure out potential travel plans, either to or from the US right now. And I want to point out some other resources that might help you on a more personal level. I know that these are pretty difficult financial times for a lot of people, particularly in our international community. For those of you that are in Las Vegas in the Valley area, 3 Square is the primary food bank that's open to the public, and they're a great agency. And if you might be in a difficult place financially right now, they might have some assistance for you with food. I keep saying over and over that this is a pretty stressful and crazy time, and I mean that. It's hard on all of us. It's certainly hard on me personally. It causes a lot of anxiety and stress. There's a lot we don't know. And so that being said, I want to really point out both UNLV CAPS, the Counseling and Psychological Services Center here, Counseling and Psychological Resource Center. They have a lot of great, tools for you to use, and a lot of that I think you're doing right now is telehealth. So it might be virtual or Zoom webcam appointments, just like we're doing right now. And the practice also does that as well. I think they work in tandem with CAPS a lot. There's some great resources there. A lot of it is free or extremely discounted depending upon your salary level. And I just highly encourage you all to take advantage of these right now. If you're having a difficult time mentally, nothing to be ashamed of. We're all going through that. It's just a difficult year in the books for us. For any staff and faculty who might be joining us, particularly look into the Employee Assistance Program. That's something as part of the UNLV Health Insurance. I think you're automatically opted into that. That's HR's page right there, and they help connect you with psychological services as well. All right, so let's go and start off with some general announcements. A lot of this information is both for students and scholars. Full disclosure, I haven't necessarily organized it the best, so you're going to get a hodgepodge of some student information, some scholar information as we go from slide to slide. Our instruction is still online at this point. It's been that way since essentially spring break. We're continuing with fully remote instruction till at least summer 2, which is mid-July. I think at present the plan is for a very small number of in-person classes in session 3, but largely online then as well. For the fall 2020 semester, as of today, and I have to stress as of today because plans keep changing depending upon developments with the virus and its spread in Nevada, the plan for the fall semester is for, I think the goal is around 50% of coursework to be offered online, fully remote, and the other 50% to be in person, with a whole bunch of important social distancing measures in place, reducing class size, limiting how many people can be in a class, maybe splitting how many times they meet during the week into smaller groups, looking at having the schedules for in-person classes start and end at slightly different times, so they're staggered, so not everyone's in a hallway at once. So that's the tentative plan for fall semester, but again, a lot can change even between now and August. As far as F1 students go and impacts to maintenance of status requirements, as of right now, we're still waiting for official guidance from SEVP, the Student Exchange Visitor Program, saying what the rules, quote unquote, are going to be for the fall semester. Our school has been asking for that. All U.S. universities have been asking the government for that. And we keep getting told that that guidance is coming soon, which is frustrating, I know, because the semester is right around the corner for us. I put down here the expectation, what we really expect, and I want to say assume is going to happen, is that students who are in F1 status are going to be given regulatory flexibility to have more online classes than normal, just like we had for the spring. Those of you that were in F1 status in the spring know that when COVID-19 happened, we got permission from the government to allow you to be in oh, hold on a second. I'm getting notifications that people are trying to get in. I don't think, I'm not getting the notification, possibly because I'm presenting. Let me see if I can figure this out. Hold on a second here. Technical difficulties here, you guys. We have some people that are trying to join in, but the notification hasn't showed up for me to let them in. I don't know if there's a way to delegate. Let me see if there is. Okay. I am not sure. I saw some other people have joined just in the last few minutes, so I think it's working. And again, I haven't gotten any notifications that are popping up. So I guess it, oh yeah, it says work for Natalia too. If people are having trouble, let them know. I think if they try, well, no. It seemed to allow people with UNLV domains to come right in. I'm not getting notifications, so I'm sorry. We're just going to, I think, plow ahead, and those that can't join in will unfortunately we'll have to watch the recording after we post it. So let me go back to shared screen. Uh-oh. Present, turn back. Okay. Can everyone see the presentation again? Is that back? Yeah, I'm still getting notifications that more people are joining, so I think it's working for most people. Everyone sees the presentation? Give me a thumbs up or something. Yeah, okay. All right, so I was saying we expect that the fall semester guidance will allow continuing students at the least to be enrolled in more online coursework than normal or even fully online. We are waiting every day for this official fall government guidance about what you have to do, and we're going to be sharing that, adapting our plans as soon as we get it, which I certainly hope is soon. The larger question is for students with initial I-20s who would be coming here from outside the US. That guidance is still not clear. Back in spring, it had sounded as if our operations are still largely online. They might have to wait out a semester, but we don't know definitively if that's the case. So I-20s are still being issued for fall semester if you're a new student or you know someone who's a new student, but there's a possibility that the I-20s may have to be deferred to the spring semester and potentially start online this fall. Again, the moment we know this, you're going to know it. Just the whole country's waiting on this guidance from the government. There's also some discussion, brand new discussion, about possible self-quarantine requirements for travelers coming from international destinations to the US. This is literally something we've just heard about in about the past 24 hours or so in our office, and so we are trying to get as much information from UNLV administration as we can so we can give you clarification. It may be the case that international visitors who are staying in the dorms and on-campus housing may have to have a 2-week self-quarantining buffer, and that's based on CDC guidelines. Those are federal level guidelines, not state level guidelines. So again, this is a brand new development. Right now, it appears to be UNLV policy that this would impact international travelers who would be living in the dorms specifically. And as soon as we have more details, we'll let you know. Our office is having a lot of conversations with leadership about what this means and its potential impacts for you, because we understand that's not an easy or simple ask. So we're working on it. We'll let you know as soon as we get clarification. Ongoing, if I want to say update, but ironically, it's almost verbatim what we said about 2 months ago. Most U.S. embassies and consulates are still closed as they were back in April. We've heard of a small number of people that are being able to schedule appointments now. Most of those appear to be for August, September, or later as the actual schedule date for that appointment, depending upon where you are in the world. Obviously, since the pandemic is affecting different countries differently, we're going to expect embassy and consulate operations to also resume in kind of a staggered, way. But I have not heard of anyone who's really receiving visa appointments prior to August. The exception are emergency requests. Most embassy or consulates, if you go to the actual web page for the U.S. consulate in Seoul or Beijing or Paris or wherever the case might be, they have a procedure in place at that local area to request an emergency appointment. I was working with a professor not too long ago who's trying to do exactly that. But most of those emergency waivers are being granted for medical professionals or medical researchers who are trying to come to the U.S., or maybe some sort of urgent emergency humanitarian need. So you can certainly request that, but I have to caution, I think the actual number seems to be quite small. All right, here, let's see, we're seeing some appointments scheduled. Yeah, I already mentioned all that. Okay, international travel also does not seem that different from where we were 2 months ago when we last did this. There are a lot of travel restrictions still in effect between the United States and a lot of countries. The US-Canada, US-Mexico borders are still limited to what they call essential travel only. That keeps getting renewed. I think twice now it's been renewed, so it's at least through July, mid-July right now. I would expect it more than likely to get extended again. That particular essential travel restriction between Canada and Mexico does allow for travel for study, to do study here, or for employment if you have an H1B visa or whatnot. If you're doing that, please let our office know, because I say here that enforcement can be a little bit inconsistent. It would be good if potentially you take a letter with you, depending upon your circumstance, maybe from your academic advisor, maybe from your employer, maybe from us, it just depends, to help clarify that your travel falls under that essential only definition. So that's the US with Canada and Mexico. From most of Europe, travel is still largely restricted if you've been in any of the impacted countries in the past 14 days. I have a list down there. This is, well, not just Europe, but China, Iran, the Schengen area, which is most of Western Europe. You can look up the exact countries, most of Central Europe as well, UK, Ireland, and Brazil. So right now, travel is completely limited if you've been in any of those countries 14 days prior to the point you are trying to enter the US. Technically, you could go to a third country before coming to the US. For example, an individual from Ireland could go to, I don't know, I think Iceland is not impacted. I'd have to check. I don't think they're part of the Schengen area, but potentially go to Iceland, let's say, for 14 days and then come here. That's not necessarily advisable because A, it's expensive, time consuming, and third country transit is just a little risky if you have travel delays or flight cancellations.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
So does it mean that if you're at the airport, let's say in Germany, and you're not technically in the country, does it mean that 14 days prior to attempt entry?
I think that does include airport transit, yes. I think yes. Don't quote me on it. But I think it does include transit in airports. Does it include African countries? I don't believe so, no. I don't believe that there's a blanket restriction between any African countries. I think the only across-the-board restrictions on travel are the countries listed there: China, Iran, the Schengen area of Europe, UK, Ireland, and Brazil.
So Eastern Europe is fine?
Well, you have to look up the Schengen area. I don't have the list of countries memorized. I don't think Ukraine is on there, but Poland, for example, I think is. Yeah. Only the European Schengen areas. This is taken, by the way, directly from the CDC hyperlink a couple pages back. This CDC travel information that has all the countries and areas that are currently restricted with travel. So if you want to check that, that'll tell you which countries are impacted and which are not. All right. A few other things regarding student relief funds. There's been a lot of communication going out about the CARES Act, and there's a lot of confusion in messaging. UNLV students, including international students, did get a lot of email messaging about possible funds they can apply for. These were institutional UNLV coronavirus relief funds, not to be confused with federal CARES Act relief funds that are a little different. I think that most of that has been dispersed. We know some people that have gotten it, but not everyone. So if you got notified that you were awarded, but are having trouble receiving that, we have the link right there. You should contact financial aid or registrar directly because they're the people that are dispersing that. And there may potentially be some more aid that hasn't been dispersed from that pot of money just yet. The graduate assistant aid applications, I know we ourselves sent out an announcement about that a few weeks back. Those are being reviewed. It's the latest information we have. They have not been awarded. So as you can imagine, there was a very large volume of applicants, and they're needing more time to really go through because unfortunately they don't have enough funds to give to everyone. They haven't made those determinations just yet. Unemployment insurance, we've gotten some questions about that. Actually, just about I think a week ago or earlier this week, I did receive some communication back from the Nevada UI office on unemployment insurance. And so unemployment insurance eligibility is determined on the state level. So it's up to the state of Nevada to determine which international individuals, whether students or scholars, could apply. They indicated that an individual would probably need an EAD card to be able to apply in the first place. And even if you have that EAD card, you have to meet their other criteria, including how long you worked for and which quarters you worked for. But just baseline to be able to apply, the response to us is that you would need an EAD card, which unfortunately means that earlier, sorry, I got a message here about people trying to add, you don't have to stop sharing the screen or anything. Yeah, I am checking, Heather. I know I'm being told some people are trying to join the meeting, but there aren't any notifications. I mean, they pop up on my screen saying that so-and-so is trying to join, and I have not seen any of those. Are there students or anyone telling us that they're still trying to join the meeting and not able to?
Yes, we've gotten a couple of messages, but it's okay. We can just try to resend some links to them as long as you're keeping an eye on it. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I'm watching here and I'm getting notifications when other people join on their own. So I don't know what the problem is, unfortunately. But let them know we will put this back on our YouTube just like the other one. So we'll upload it and they'll just have to rewatch later.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Some other updates regarding USCIS. So a couple of months ago, premium processing was suspended. That largely impacted H1B petitions. That has been restored as of this month, actually. There are a couple of different phased out dates during June. So now if you have a pending H1B petition, premium processing can be requested, or if you have a petition coming up, that's an option for your department or from your employer if you might be working elsewhere. But that's a bit of good news. We do have that option available now. Some of the in-person appointments are available now. So this largely applies to people that are doing what's called biometrics. So someone who's doing a change of status, filing an I-539, maybe you have H4 dependents and you're doing this. Those were all paused, and now some of those appointments have been restored, but it just depends on what state and what city, because every state and city has different reopening guidelines, right? So you have to look at your local USCIS office to see if those appointments are happening. This also impacts green card interviews that might have been on hold as well. Just general news about USCIS, and this really impacts international community across the board. Sorry, I'm just checking to try to make sure no one else is joining. I still don't see any of that. USCIS, this is in the news. You can look up about this. They are having some funding problems. I think largely because the volume of applications they've gotten across the country has gone down since the pandemic started a few months ago. And so they've actually approached the US Congress to more or less say they're running out of funding. And if they don't get funding from Congress, they may have to furlough some employees, which would then probably make their processing times go down. There's no resolution yet on what's going to happen. To that situation. So it's a political question right now. What's going to happen with USCIS, if their time will increase or not? We also don't know how much the premium processing coming back is going to impact processing times. Before, it made other non-premium processes take longer. We'll just have to monitor that as time goes on. All right, some other updates. This is largely about OPT. We said this before, it's still true. NAFSA, AILA, other agencies are all advocating for increased flexibility for OPT. The last SEVP update we got also said that they're looking at OPT issues right now, which is largely running out of unemployment time. They have not made any changes at the federal level to enforcement of OPT rules, how long it lasts for, maximum unemployment times, etc. So they're still in effect today. Recent SEVP guidance, did say that individuals that were, on leave in accordance with their company's policies, which generally is interpreted as like on payroll, still considered an employee, would be fulfilling the requirements of OPT, and that they also said something along the lines of it. They could work less than 20 hours and still be considered engaged in OPT, but that's the most that we've gotten. We haven't gotten anything conclusive beyond that. Telework. Oh, they also mentioned teleworking too. I forgot that. So they did clarify that working remotely or teleworking on OPT is perfectly acceptable right now. Processing time still seems to be relatively normal. I mean, maybe in the 2 to 3 month range, so that's good. I mentioned earlier, though, there's a lot of unknowns about USCIS's funding future in the coming months, and that could change that. Those of you that are looking for employment opportunities for OPT, Career Services is still open and working remotely, and they are still posting jobs as they become available in Hire Rebels. You can get in touch with them. I'd also throw in a reminder here that those on OPT can also meet their OPT employment requirements by doing eligible volunteer positions. So something still directly related to your field of study, but a volunteer unpaid position related to your major could allow you to maintain status on OPT. A couple things about J1 visas. This is a standard reminder. We definitely need to know if there's any changes to your J1 program. A lot of J1 visitors are requesting to extend their programs right now with their departments because they might not be able to return home. Some are ending their program early because it's difficult to maybe continue their research or studies in the current environment. Whatever the case may be, we really need you to contact us so we can make sure your DS 2019 is up to date. There was an auto extension of some small number of DS 2019s back in April. You already got notification about that. If you are having trouble arranging for your return travel to your home country, let us know. And this is true for F1 students or any status, actually. If your status is ending and you're unable to return, please let us know. Because that allows us to at least add documentation to your file that, let's say, for example, you are trying to depart the US. We'll always remind you to contact your embassy consulate to see if they're helping with repatriation in any way. Some countries are helping to organize that for their citizens to the extent possible. Again, we'll add a note in your file that you're trying to comply with these deadlines as best as you can. Depending upon your status, J or F or whatever the case might be, there might be a possibility for an extension. So whatever the case might be, please tell us. That doesn't mean that we have a perfect answer for it. In the case of F1 OPT, the options are still largely the same, but it's better to at least document that you're trying to return within the normal guidelines for your status. A couple things about H1B. I mentioned the premium processing, that we've already restored that. Our office, UNLV in general, is still processing H1B petitions that we get from your department, both new ones and extensions. There hasn't been any campus-wide policy change or announcement to that as of right now. I certainly don't expect that to happen. The campus-wide hiring freeze is obviously a little bit of an impact for new H1Bs, but that's just something where a hiring department will need permission from their administrators to proceed with a hire, just like they would for domestic. Now more than ever, though, it is really important to stay on top of your H1B status, end dates, I-94 end dates, whatever, and proactively early be in touch with our office to talk about these things. If you're coming up for extension, I recommend we do it as soon as we can. And that's just because there's a lot of uncertainty right now about what the future might hold. So I'd rather process things or try to extend things or approve them early if we can. And I'll talk about that in a later slide. I mentioned the furloughs impacts for H1B. Oh, no, I did not mention the furlough impact for H1B. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. At least I don't think I talked about it. So this is specific to H1B visa holders. So our office has been in communication with the leadership above us. There's a lot of talk about UNLV because of budget cuts having to furlough many of its employees, which means essentially everyone, ourselves included, takes a small pay cut by taking a day off each month where you don't work. For H1B employees in particular, this may not be allowed, and so we've spoken with Human Resources about a possible exception for H1B employees. This has to do with the labor condition application. Basically, we promise to pay you a certain amount to the government, and we can't really pay lower than that without amending the H1B petition. So if you are in H1B status, good news for you is that you actually might not get a furlough. Once we have official communication from the university about who's getting furloughs, we'll share that with you, of course. Quick reminder about H1B status as well. I know that we're on remote instruction right now, so especially for faculty, you might be working from home. It's important to understand that as an H1B visa holder, even if you're doing that, you still need to be based in the same geographic region, still in the Las Vegas Valley, as opposed to, neighboring California or New York or Utah, or wherever the case might be. Within the US, you still need to be employed in the same region. And if you're not, you need to be in contact with us so we can talk about that. If you're outside the US for travel or for summer, that's a slightly different story. Okay, so lots of stuff going on in the news these days. Oh my goodness, it's hard to keep up with. So the last update we did in April, there was a so-called 60-day suspension on immigration to the US. It turned out that it impacted a relatively small number of people. This was actually limited to really only those that were trying to emigrate, meaning really trying to get a green card, a US citizenship, to come to the US, and it only impacted people that were already outside the country at the time of the order, who were trying to get essentially a green card to come into the US as an immigrant at that time. It has not had any tangible impact that I know of to green card applications within the US, which are still being filed and processed. So that ended up being relatively small in scope. Then we had on May 29th, I think it was, the executive order about certain Chinese graduate students and graduate student researchers in F or J status, and basically limits some graduate researchers or students from coming to the US if they are linked to the military-civil fusion strategy. I saw a question about that pop up, and actually it might be a time to address that. So how can we know if we're impacted by that? So it's still not totally clear, because the announcement came out and then they didn't clarify, the government didn't clarify how they're identifying those individuals who are part of this military-civil fusion strategy. There was a Department of State call just a couple of days ago. I was reading about it this morning, and it sounds like this decision is going to be made at the point of visa application. So when an individual actually applies for a J1 F1 visa, if they're a Chinese passport holder, graduate student only, we're not talking about anyone undergraduate, that the actual consular officer at the US Embassy will decide when they apply if they are linked to this military civil fusion strategy based upon your background, educational background, funding sources, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't sound like it's something that's going to be, retroactively applied to people in the US. It'll be at the point of visa application. The Department of State said that they are not going to provide a list saying here's all the businesses or schools or et cetera that are tied to this. They're not going to do that. That will be private information for them. But there is, and I don't have a link with me. If you send me an email, I can share this information with you. They hinted that it might be based on a related list that the Australian, I think, government released. It's a complicated story, but if you email me, I'll share this with you. But we're not going to get the full list of here's all the entities that you might get connected to. Is it going to be something where a J1 or F1 Chinese graduate student researcher gets told at the embassy, sorry, we can't give you the visa because of this reason. They even said they wouldn't do administrative processing. They would just tell you at the point of application if you're on that list. But it's not a publicly accessible list. So we can't just look at it and say, oh, you're here, you won't get it. It's something that the US Embassy would decide. So that's going on right now. The good news there is I think the overall number of people impacted will be small. And again, it's not going to impact undergraduates at all, only graduates. There's also a limitation on the number of US-China flights, direct flights between US and China. At one point, there was a threat to cancel them entirely, which fortunately was backed down. This was a little bit of a political fight back and forth between the two countries. And it seems to have resolved with at least a small number of daily flights still ongoing between US and China, which we're all relieved to hear is happening. Now, the item that's giving a lot of people anxiety and worry is a possible upcoming executive order or presidential proclamation or enforcement rule change, whatever it may be, that could impact H1Bs, that could impact OPT, that could impact CPT. We don't know is the short answer. We really do not know. 60 days ago, back in April, when there was that initial suspension I talked about related to green cards, part of the order basically said that within 60 days they were going to come up with some recommendations that might further limit immigration in various ways. There's a lot of political rumor and stories coming about work type visas being targeted, which is why H1B, OPT, CPT are getting talked about a lot. So let's start with the good news on that. The good news is, one, nothing's happened yet. As of right now, everything is still the same. We don't know exactly when or how soon these could come out. We could get an order tomorrow, could come in a week, a month, 2 months, we don't know. And the best news of all, in my opinion, is there's a lot of lobbying happening on a national level to help protect these things. Most of the lobbying is coming from institutions like ourselves, higher education institutions, universities across the country know how important it is to have our international students and scholars at our universities. You're critical for our research and for the success of our programs here. And universities want you to be here. We want you to be here. So there's a lot of political lobbying happening and alarm on this issue. Myself, I think I saw a question come up about this, and actually, yes. So just yesterday, I met along with our executive director with our government affairs staff here at UNLV. So these are the people that regularly talk to the congressional delegations for Nevada and explain to them how important our F1 and J1 and H1B individuals are here, and other statuses too, TN and ON, etc. But how important the international community is to UNLV. And we talked about ways to lobby our congressional representatives so they understand how important this is. And we're not the only school doing this by far. Many universities across the country and across the state share these concerns. And a lot of major businesses and corporations also share these concerns. They understand that you are skilled, intelligent, valuable workers and employees, and they want you here. So there's a lot of political pressures maybe against these things, but there's also a lot of powerful forces in the country that are advocating for how important H1B and OPT and CPT and the international community is to our country. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're not alone, and a lot of people have your back on this. We certainly do, and we're doing everything we can to push against this. Whatever does happen, it might be a very small change like the last order, it might be a very big sweeping change, might be temporary, might be permanent, whatever the case may be. It's very likely that when it comes out, there's going to be legal challenges to it in court, especially if it becomes really broad or a potential overreach of authority. And so whatever comes out is not likely to be the final decision anyways. There's probably going to be court challenges. And then the last bit of uncertainty here is this is an election year. It's a major federal election year. And this is a highly charged political issue, unfortunately. And so whatever happens in the election could also greatly impact what we're talking about right now in either direction. So that's a lot of uncertainty, and I'm sorry, and I want to acknowledge how stressful and anxiety-inducing this is for you. It is for us too, just working in this field, so I can imagine the stress that you feel. But just know that we're doing everything we can to highlight how important you are here to our congressional delegates. There's a lot of advocacy going on. I've seen quite a lot trying to protect these things, okay? So long story short is we don't know, and literally nobody knows what's being written and when it's going to come out, but we're following it, and whatever happens, there's a lot of people that are going to be fighting for and trying to protect H and OPT and CPT and all the visa categories that we have here at UNLV. All right, now questions, and I actually had quite a lot of submitted questions, so I'm going to try to look through and see things that we haven't touched on. There were questions about the travel ban for Europe. I have seen no official news about when that one would get lifted. Again, the US, Mexico, and Canada one keeps getting kind of re-extended on a monthly basis. I have not seen any official news come out about when that will be listed. So I don't know if it'll be removed before summer. I'm afraid it's a wait and see. A lot of these questions, I'm going to apologize. A lot of the answers are going to be, we have to wait and see because we don't know and nobody knows, but we're trying our best to find out. Somebody asked about the H1B visa and potential changes. Again, we don't know what changes are going to be coming out. As of right now, there's been no change to UNLV policy. And my best advice is if we can, we file stuff as early as possible, as soon as possible. The earliest we can do extensions are 6 months out. So it's good to try to get these things done now, just in case there are potential changes. People asked about switching to partially remote classes and maintaining your status. I mentioned earlier, over the spring and summer, we've had permission from the government to allow F1 students to take more online classes, and we fully expect that to be the same for fall. So if UNLV has a very limited number of in-person classes, which it appears that's going to be the case, only a small number will be in person, I strongly suspect and I expect that we're going to have permission for you to take more online classes. We keep waiting for the official guidance, like every university in the country is. Just so you know, I'm not making this up. We've asked our local representatives for F1 status, the SEVP field reps. Most schools have done the same thing. We're all asking for this information and sharing your frustration that we don't have it right now, but doing our best in the meantime. Let's see here. Social Security offices, this has come up with some students we've talked with. To the best of my knowledge, as of right now, Social Security offices still are not allowing in-person appointments. I don't think. That's the latest I checked, at least here locally. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leslie or Michael in the chat. I think you guys were looking at this earlier. And so the only way to apply is by mail, which is, well, problematic because you don't necessarily want to send those documents via mail. So that's the latest we got from the Social Security office. They haven't given us any indications that you're able to apply for an SSN before that. Remaining in status when your end date is coming up. I'll kind of recap what I said there. This is really for any status, F, J, H1B, TN, you name it. If your status is ending and you're having difficulty arranging for travel, couple things. Number one, please let us know so we can make note that you're in good faith trying to comply with legal requirements to return home or leave the country on time. Check with your embassy or consulate to see. Some countries were helping facilitate what are called like repatriation flights, helping get you back to your home country as needed. Depending upon your status, there could be the possibility to extend it, but it just depends. If you're F1, you might be able to transfer to a short-term program, ESL program. If you're J1, you might be eligible to extend your research year. If you're H, it depends where you're at. Have you reached your 6 years or not? Or do you fall into an exception category? Let us know. In some cases, we might also recommend an immigration attorney because, you know, there are things called bridge applications, like a temporary application to request B status, really just to get yourself time. So let us know and we'll give you the best advice we can from there. There was a question about healthcare taking effect before you pay tuition. We would probably need to check with Ellen Bolt, the health insurance expert here at UNLV, to find out when the effective date is for the fall 2020 health insurance. I want to say it takes effect slightly before the semester, but I would need to ask Ellen Bolt. So if one of the advisors wants to make a note of that, we can check with Ellen and find out, and we'll share that with you if you shoot us a message. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is August, is what Leslie had said, and I think that's when it takes effect, slightly before the semester begins. Trying to go through the other questions that were submitted beforehand. Can you take classes from your country and continue at UNLV this semester? A little bit about this depends on your I-20 status right now, and it depends on the fall guidance that we're waiting for. We think that if F1 students with active I-20s are outside the country right now and you're not able to come back, that you're likely going to be allowed to keep your I-20 status active while you do like online coursework this fall. That's what I expect is going to be the case, but we're waiting for the official guidance from SEVP. But that's my best guess. I'll call it that. Let's see here, update on premium processing. I mentioned that already. It's been restored, so that is available now. There's a question about, let's see, leave of absence. So somebody actually asked an interesting question about funding for the OISS. Someone said, you know, there's, say, 1,200 students, X number of dollars in tuition. How would the international department deal with a large loss of funds? That's a wonderful question. Certainly something we're thinking about and something that we're talking with our administrators. What I can tell you is no matter what happens, our office is not going to go away and we're still going to be here to help you. So I'm aware of the financial hardships that this could put on our office's budget, but we are not going to be going away. There's still going to be advisors here to serve you no matter what happens with furloughs and budget cuts in the coming year or potential dip in our international numbers. And I can tell you those conversations are definitely happening above us. Opening up more classes to change the in-person requirements. Someone was asking about having difficulty finding enough in-person classes. What I would say to that is, again, I expect we're going to have permission for continuing F students to take fewer in-person classes. We just haven't gotten the official permission yet from the government to do so. Someone is talking about returning to the US after being abroad for 2 years and are unable to get a visa right now. So unfortunately, we can't do anything to get you a visa sooner. It's going to be up to Seoul or whatever consulate you're applying at. Sounds like in Korea here. You can apply for the emergency visa appointment, but you may not receive it in time. It's possible you may need to begin this semester online, perhaps from outside the US, taking some online classes, and then you may need to return in spring with a deferred I-20. Once we get that guidance, we're going to let everyone with an initial I-20 know options about potentially deferring an I-20 or being able to arrive here if you can. There's a question about GA-ship. We'll have to GA-ship classes to go online. So this is going to have to be decided by the graduate college. I don't know if they're going to still be awarding GA-ships to people who are outside of the US this fall. I don't know if there's been a decision made on that. If one of the advisors or someone has heard otherwise, let me know. I have not seen an answer to that from grad college. And if I have an F1 visa, is there anything more I need to do? I see stuff on UNLV residency. Okay. All right. Other questions, and help me out in the chat here because I've been going along with this presentation. Is there any stuff we have not answered? And if any of you advisors have been reading this and want to chime in with something we need to address, let me know.
Yeah, Jake, could I chime in?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, a couple of things. The question about GA ships overseas, the provost had to make the decision that they would not fund those if you weren't physically on campus. So they're trying to do an alternate things within the grad school. We haven't been read in on all of that as far as trying to help out with some of the funding, and all of that I have not got an answer to. But they are not going to do GA ships while you're in a remote status, not in the United States. The other thing is the question about H1B and restrictions for OPT. Jason and I have already met with our delegation representatives as far as the Government Affairs Office from UNLV, so that President Miana is aware of those kinds of issues, and also with legal counsel. And so that will all be elevated to our Nevada delegation, north and south, and we will just see how all that plays out. But it's been elevated to the highest level, including the fact that H1Bs cannot be furloughed, the ones that are working here. So I just want to make sure that was put out there, everybody.
Thanks. Are there other questions? If anybody, you can type in chat, or if you want to, you can turn on your mic and ask if you have any questions. I'm going to wait a minute because it can take time to type or for people to turn off your mics. Is there anything that we haven't addressed that you want to talk about? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Any new questions coming up? Anything else that anyone else in the office wants to update or share about? I don't think I have anything else we haven't covered. Okay. If you think of more questions, go ahead.
Hey, Jason, can you look up the original flyer for the health insurance on the orientation folder? That should have the dates that it covers for this current year.
I can't do that right now in the middle of the meeting, but I will find that. Can whoever asked that question maybe just send us an email and I can look that up afterwards? Because I don't want to hunt through the file right now while we're doing this. Well, if there isn't anything else other than that, thank you to all of us who did join in. And again, I know this is a tough time for us all, and we are here to help you as best as we can. We're doing everything we can to support you and to really advocate for how much value you bring to the university and to our community, really. So we've got your back. We're going to update you as soon as we can with news, as soon as we get it. Trust me, every day we're having lots and lots of talk about what we can try to do to clarify things for you and make this fall semester easier for all of our international population at UNLV. So with that, we'll head out. We'll share this online and follow us on social media. We will be doing events again soon, possibly as soon as next week. Enjoy a great weekend. Stay safe and healthy, everybody, and stay in touch.